the place of altars are places of destiny. Nothing alters destiny like altar. The place of victory is a place of altars. The place of power can be found at the altar. The place of access is a place of altars. Altars determines destinies. To fulfill destiny, you must be a lover of raising altars. Altars serve as gates of heavens. The gates way to God is the altar. The way into the realm of the spirit is the place of altar. The way to God is a way of altars. Even our traditional brethren and fathers knows this fact and truth. You see, when they want to access the spirit realm, they go to the altar. That is why those of you who are coming from a traditional background like me, you will see that when you were growing up, there were altars in the house. And sometimes in the morning, they will get up and go to the altar with blood. They will go to the altar and they are talking. And you're wondering what they are talking. But they are talking anyway. They are at the altar and they are talking. Because at the altar, things are altered for destiny fulfillment. Nothing determines destiny like altars. For example, when the king of Moab wanted to overcome the strength of Israel, the Bible said that they sent for a false prophet. And when the false prophet came, in order to curse the people of Israel, he demanded for altars to be raised. As you know, altars goes with what? Sacrifices. This is what people do to bring others down. If God has not really intervened, it will have happened to them. The false prophet was about to exchange the destiny of Israel with oxen and with rams. But God will not permit him because there was a higher altar speaking on behalf of the children of Israel. And so because of that higher altar, God rather put the words in the mouth of the false prophet. And by the first altar, instead of cursing the people of Israel, he blessed them. The second altar, instead of cursing the people of Israel, he blessed them. And then until the seventh one, and the king got angry and said, oh, I brought you to curse these people. If you won't curse them, don't also bless them. But these 3 times, you have blessed them. Do you know why? The time that the people of Israel left Egypt, they raised an altar. According to Exodus chapter 12, the Bible said that raise an altar of a lamb. So there was already an altar that they have raised. And that was the altar. He said, when I see the blood, I'll pass over. No harm shall come near your dwelling. And he said, even if the destroyer come, it shall not come into your tent to destroy you. Yeah. So if you are a flesh, soul, and a spirit being on earth, and you don't have any altar speaking for you, you are in danger. That is why I tell people that are always in diverse kinds of, when they are in problems, they know how to come to church. And immediately the miracle is done, they vanish. And I tell them, you see, the miracle is not the problem. You need to stay connected in order to remain covered. If you want to continue to enjoy life and to fulfill destiny, you need to stay connected to your altar. Remember, what makes the altar effective is blood with sacrifice. Nothing powers destiny like altar with bloody sacrifice. Remember, before the children of Israel left Egypt, there was a bloody sacrifice that took place. God ordered them to kill a blemished lambs, use the blood on their doorposts, their lintels. This lamb they killed was a type of the New Testament cross of Jesus, which is also an altar. Remember, at the altar of Calvary, we were redeemed, we are covered. This lamb they slain before they left the Exodus, it was a type of the cross, the altar on Golgotha. Abraham equally fulfilled destiny by raising altars. So if you want to change your life, you only do that on the altar. There was an altar at every junction of Abraham's life. He will raise an altar to commune with God, and the altar will change his level and keep changing his level. So at the place of altars, destinies can be changed. In Genesis chapter 13 verse 14 and 18, the same chapter, we are seeing different kind of altars. Every time God appeared to Abraham and spoke to him a prophetic word, he dropped a seed to activate it. What am I saying here? Every time you come to church, aside from preparing an offering, you should have a seed offering. When you hear a prophetic word that you want it to happen to you, you drop a seed. Because every prophecy God gave him, he raised an altar to see it come true. And that is one of the steps and the secret of Abraham. He used altars, he engaged altars to change level. And a man of altar will never remain at one level. For God to give Abraham the sworn blessing, an altar was required by Abraham. I'm sure that was the last altar that he gave. And he received the sworn blessing at the top of the mountain of Moriah. Abraham secured to himself a sworn blessing in Genesis 22, reading from verse 8 all the way to 18. You see how God finally came down and was demanding an altar to be raised, because Abraham thought he has achieved destiny, because at that time he had so much great substance. So he thought that all what God has promised him has come to pass. He was only left to die. He said, no, you haven't seen what I have promised you yet. Because in Genesis 24 verse 35, when Eliezer had gone to look for a wife for Isaac, he was testifying about Abraham. And look at what he said: the Lord had blessed my master greatly. He's become great. So Abraham thought that this level was okay. So he dwelt there for long You know, after the birth of Isaac got married at age 40. So for about 35 years, Abraham had dwelled at one place, thinking that he was okay now. No changing of levels. So God said, no, there's a need to change the last level. There's a ladder you need to climb so that I can give you the swan blessing. Because that will mean destiny fulfillment. That blessing is an eternal excellence. A name that will transcend generations. The joy of many generations to come. And to get that blessing, God required Abraham to raise an altar. He said, go to Moriah, take a 3-day journey. And when you get to Moriah, there were 7 mountains. One of them sacrificed Isaac, your first fruits. So the Bible said in verse 9, he lifted up his eyes and saw the mountain. And they came to the place which God has told him of. And there he built an altar. And in verse 10, he took up the sword. And in verse 11, he heard a voice from heaven, touch not the land. And when he lifted up to see who is speaking, the only thing he could see was the ram for the sacrifice. There was a ram for the altar to be activated. So he took the ram and activated the altar. And God said, by myself have I sworn, saith the Lord of hosts, because thou hast done this thing, hast not withheld thy son, thy only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, in multiplying I will multiply thee, thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sands upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gates of their enemies, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. So we must understand that nothing defines destiny like altar. Abraham got the swan blessing through an altar. Even it has to take an altar for God to get the destiny of mankind back to God. When God wanted to get men back to himself, when God wanted to restore the destiny of men, he said somebody must go to the cross. Even God needed an altar to restore his relationship with man back. At the cross he said, Eli, Eli, Eli. After that cry, he gave up the ghost. And there was a sign. The veil in the temple was ripped from top to bottom. And there was an earthquake. And there was darkness upon the earth for 6 hours. And after the blood began to drop, you and I, our salvation and destiny was carved. Many of us, we are where we are because we don't have altars. If you always want to change a level, you need an altar to change that level.